Warm welcome from my side for the 28th meetup here at the BlockchainHub Graz. I give you a short overview and then we present a couple of interesting things to you. First, anybody here first time? Yep. Okay. You're also here first time? Yeah. We just met at the hackathon. Okay. Cool. Cool. I made enough advertisements. Very good. So, BlockchainHub Graz, a little bit of history. Back then in 2016, I stumbled over Ethereum in February, and then I was looking around what is out there, and then I found the BlockchainHub network, and then I contacted Shermin here, and together with Jean-Luc we founded the first blockchain hubs in Brussels, in Berlin and in Graz. Then we kind of increased the network, and now I would say the Graz blockchain hub is the only one which is really active and doing meetups and all that kind of stuff. So we're still in touch. So those two, they're all writing books and giving presentations, and Shermin moved.
Making money?
Yeah, sure. Selling books, which is very simple to make money with selling books. Shermin is leading the Crypto Economics Institute in Vienna. So she moved back from Berlin to Vienna, and basically the network itself doesn't exist anymore in that kind of way as it was meant in that time. So a lot of kind of common ground what we covered. So we said we are a non-profit, and we still keep that up till today to explain to non-techies blockchain, but it's not as important as 2016. So then it was really like, okay, a lot of people had no clue what it is. And of course, connecting organizations and networks. Now it's more focused what we do in daily business, actually. For everyone who is not familiar with blockchain stuff, on the BlockchainHub webpage, there is still a lot of material. So if you want to lead somebody into that direction, if somebody is getting interested among your friends and peers, you can tell them, go there, there are beginner's guide and stuff like that to go through, learn what it is, so you don't need the newest material. There are things which don't change at some point, even in blockchain, and you can direct them there. For everything what we do in here, we have a YouTube channel, so a lot of videos are there, so you can watch back. And for example, that kind of picture was taken at the Blockchain Startup Contest in 2016. So we organized a competition on a global level, and we had like 80 applicants and from 5 continents, and at that time I was registered to 80 Facebook groups and 40 IoT groups, and I was promoting the contest personally in all available Facebook groups at that time. So the 80 Facebook groups were, all of them were there are at that moment, so there were not more. And yeah, with the hype, everything changed, obviously. SlideShare, do we get your slides? Can we put them up on SlideShare? Okay. So we have, from a lot of kind of presentations, what we had in here, the slides up there. So if you need them additionally to the videos for some more in-detail content, you might find them there. And basically that's already for the intro. Today we are going through 2 things to present. The first one is from Michael, He was doing a project for NetID or for himself, but funded by NetID, which was at that time called Bürgerchain, as far as I remember. And obviously it's now Freie Wahl. You find that webpage on the Freie Wahl. And he's giving us his insight how you can use handy signature or Bürgerkarte for doing voting. At least that's what I kind of think what we will see. Yeah, we met at the NetID event at that time. So we handed in a project which is called Wallet, and it's basically close to completion, and you obviously took also a little longer than originally expected, I think. I don't know, or 1 year was planned?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
More or less on time.
Yeah, more or less on time. So we took a little longer. We actually wanted to do it in half a year, and then we're kind of now finishing it. And the second one is the Infineon Hackathon. Last week we had a hackathon using a new card. It's called Secure to Go card from Infineon, and we used that card to demonstrate streaming money, and we built the kind of most interesting wallet you can think of using crypto technology, and that's what we're going to present after seeing the presentation from Michael, and also kind of discussing about possibilities in voting with blockchain. What is the limitation? What is maybe better than ballot voting in Austria or something like that? So I think there is a lot of things to discuss where it could be actually improved in comparison to what we have in our current voting system. And yeah, I'm happy to have you here, and let's go on with your presentation.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you here. Regarding the name, it was originally named Bürgerchain, which is a combination of Bürgerkarte and blockchain. I don't know if you know about Bürgerkarte. It's the official Austrian medium for providing an electronic identity in the internet and signing data. That is by law, the signature is equivalent to a signature that you do by hand. And on the other hand, blockchain, so that's where Bürgerchain comes from. But when Thomas says that in 2016 you had to translate blockchain to non-techies, I made the experience that this is still a task for 2019 as well. Because when I first shared information about my project Freie Wahl on Facebook, I got a lot of questions what this blockchain stuff is. So apparently there are still a lot of people outside the techie bubble who have no idea what a blockchain is. They heard about Bitcoin, but not about blockchain. And Freie Wahl, well, I chose this name. You can find the website on the FreieWahl.at or FreieWahl.eu. It means free elections or free votings, and it's both free in the sense of free beer, that you can make votings online, e-votings online for free, and it's also free in the sense of free elections, free votings, that everybody can participate and you're free to vote for whatever you want to vote for. Well, Thomas already said a bit about my background. I received funding from NetID, but I want to go 2 steps back, where the idea came from. And as I see, Thomas apparently supports a political party in Graz. I support the same party. I'm a member of the Green Party in Graz, and one of the basic principles of the Green Party is grassroots democracy, or Basisdemokratie in German. So every decision is supposed to be made by all members of the party, more or less, as long as it makes sense. And that sounds very interesting, and it sounds like a great idea, but I also found that it's very tedious to have grassroots democracy in an organization like that. because if you want to have, if you want to vote about 5 questions, and all the members gather and want to decide what the right answers to these 5 questions are, Brexit, yes or no, might be a question that is not a question for the Green Party in Graz, but this might be a question within a political party. So you decide upon your positions regarding some topics. Then deciding, talking about these 5 topics might well take 3, 4, or even more hours. And well, I have 3 kids, I have 1.5 jobs. Often I didn't find it worth sitting there for 3 or 4 hours discussing things, some of which were not even interesting to me, and just to be able to vote and to make myself heard. So I thought about how to improve this grassroots democracy approach within the Green Party, and how to improve it in general for organizations like parties or Vereine or other organizations that follow democratic principles. This was in early 2017, and this was at the beginning of the big blockchain hype. Blockchain started, the whole thing started to gain even more momentum. And I thought, well, that would be an interesting thing to do, to implement an e-voting site for smaller organizations using blockchain technology. And well, then I stumbled upon NetID, and NetID had an open call. Most of you probably know about NetID. They fund projects that make the internet or the world in general a better place. Has to be internet related, has to be some kind of Austria related. And I received funding of about 35,000 euros for my project. So the basic idea was I want to implement a voting system that anyone can use using a browser, or maybe later on even an app, where you can, there's someone who organizes the voting, so who asks questions, and then there are voters who can vote on these questions, who can cast ballots, who can cast their votes. All of this should happen using a simple web browser. No need to install anything or so. The second thing is that voting should be anonymous, safe. I think that's a given. And secure. It should be possible to detect manipulations, and if possible, it should be possible to avoid manipulations of any kind. As we now learn from elections and votings all over the world, this is a scenario that is a real threat, that there are groups of people who try to manipulate votes through influencing voters, but also through attacking voting systems. The next point is that voters should be able to provide a secure proof of identity, and in Austria the official mean to do so is Bürgerkarte. And I was I chose to use the Handysignatur method to provide the proof of identity. The next thing is, it should not be necessary to trust me or to trust the application that I wrote. NetID enforces open source projects, so it should be open source, and it should be clear to everyone that everyone can prove that their vote was taken into account correctly, and that nobody tampered with the voting data. And last but not least, it should be easy to use. Doodle is something similar. It's also a voting application, but you usually vote on when to eat the pizza or where to go, where to spend an evening together. My voting application has somehow higher requirements regarding security and regarding traceability and manipulation proofness. The next step for me was selecting a blockchain, and that was not as easy as I thought. Before I was diving into the world of blockchains, what I heard was that blockchains are going to save the world. They're democratizing the financial markets, they are democratizing democracy, they are democratizing everything. And everyone can do everything easily within the blockchain, and it's 100% safe and secure, and starting with insurance contracts to buying or selling your car or your house to e-votings, whatever. Everything works on the blockchain, and it works. It sounded like it would work out of the box. Well, that was not really the case for me. I had a few requirements regarding the blockchain that I wanted to use. The first one was it should be cheap. Maybe that's not a good requirement to start, but from my experience with organizations like the Green Party, it's not acceptable that if you make a voting that you want to spend hundreds or even thousands of euros. And at the time when I was about to select the blockchain I wanted to use, it was in late 2017, and the transaction fees for Ethereum were 2 to 4 euros at the time. If you want to make a voting, an e-voting, and you choose that every vote that is cast corresponds to one transaction in the blockchain, you might easily get into the hundreds or even thousands of transactions, which translates to hundreds or thousands of euros that need to be spent on a single voting. So that eliminated quite a number of blockchains that they were not viable for me anymore. The second requirement was that it should be fast. Why is that? Because I wanted to show the voters that when they cast a vote, that it immediately is confirmed, and that a voting process doesn't take half an hour, but can be completed within a few minutes. And the third one, it should be reliable, and reliability has a lot of meanings, but for me, I wanted to rely on a blockchain that I would be confident would still exist after the blockchain bubble would burst, which was already foreseeable, I think, at that point in time. And there were quite a few blockchains that promised a lot, but I didn't have the feeling that they would exist long after the bursting of the bubble. So I looked into quite a lot of blockchains because, as you probably also know, when you talk to someone about a project with a blockchain, then a lot of people will come up to you and tell you, hey, did you hear about this blockchain? Or did you hear about that? And this blockchain might be the one for you. And I heard that a lot. Thomas talked about ARTIS, but ARTIS was still a bit too far away. It was not even available, so that was not an option for me either. I evaluated Ethereum a bit more closely, NXT, Ardor, IOTA, and some other more. And I was rather disappointed about most of them. None of them supported e-voting out of the box. Some supported some very simple voting mechanisms, or for Ethereum you could find contracts that kind of allowed for e-votings, but I wasn't really happy. So my decision was to make my own blockchain. I'm not really happy with the decision. You might know that about standards, the XKCD comic strip. Whenever you're unhappy with the set of options that are available, you add another option, which is maybe just as bad as the other options that were already available before. But well, in the end, I decided to make my own blockchain, and as you might know, notice now there are quotes around the word blockchain, because I'm not really 100% sure that what I implemented was a blockchain. So what I have is, I have a database, and in this database I store votings. Each voting consists of a list of questions. One question might be, who should be our next representative for the upcoming elections? And then you have a list of votes for each of these questions. And I create one blockchain for each question. The signature of the genesis block, of the first block in my blockchain, is determined by the question. So it's not possible to manipulate the question after asking it, because that would be a rather mean attack to change the question after all the answers that are there If it's a yes/no question, you could, without manipulating any of the votes, you could still manipulate the outcome. So the original, the Genesis block more or less is determined by the question that is asked, and every vote that is cast will add to this blockchain. It will contain the signature of the previous block, and it will contain the some anonymous voter ID and the decision, the actual vote, and it also contains a timestamp. And I'll talk about this timestamp in a minute. But more or less, it's just a simple database, and this database contains a list of data blocks that are connected by cryptographic means. It would be rather easy that once you have access, write access to this database, you could manipulate all the voting data. And I wanted to avoid or prevent that by adding a timestamp. So every time somebody casts a vote, I add a timestamp by a trusted third-party timestamp server. And this way, it's more or less impossible to afterwards manipulate the voting data, because I would notice that all the timestamps are from a time when the voting is probably already over, and they are probably in a very small time frame. Okay, so far the status is it works. One problem is I'm trying to get out the word. I'm talking to journalists, I'm talking to magazines. I see a few hits on my homepage, but nobody's using Freie Wahl so far. So number one, next step is I want to further spread the word. I want to get people to use Freie Wahl. It's not that easy. Apparently it's for most parties and organizations, it's on the one hand, it's a big step to say, yes, we're going to use an online voting system, we're going to trust this system, and we want to use it. And on the other hand, it's also usually pretty complicated to get it into the regulations, into the Statuten of this Verein or organization of this party. And after talking to representatives of organizations and parties, they estimate that this is usually a process that takes a year and a half, or even longer, which is for me a bit disappointing, but okay, I think I'll just have to live with this. The next, so that's the first and most important thing. I want to spread the word. I want people to use it, and once people are starting to use it, I want to continue developing it. And there are more or less two things that I want to do. The first thing is that I want to attach my database to a blockchain. So it was inspired by Thomas. Once a question is over, so there's always a certain time frame, and within this time frame you can answer a question. Once a question is over, no more answers are accepted, and then I could create a Merkle tree of the question and all the votes that were cast for this question, which would give me one hash and one transaction, and I could put this one could store this one transaction in Ethereum or ARTIS or whatever blockchain there is, which would significantly reduce the transaction costs for my votings. And the second thing I want to do is that I want to provide open access to the voting data, so that everyone can, with a simple desktop application, download all the voting data and verify if the voting data is correct and consistent. Okay. Should I show you a live demo of the system? Okay. Let's see if I can. Okay. That's the website. There are two introduction videos, one for voters. This is for voters, so if you want to participate in a voting, then you should watch this video. And if you want to create a voting, if you're, for example, an administrator in your party or in your organization, then you should watch this video. You need to create an account if you, ARTIS.
Das ist nicht
was?
Da wird mit einem Neandertaler, gell?
Ja.
So geht's mir, mir geht's ganz gleich. Ganz gleich.
Danke. So if you want to create votings for other people, then you have to create an account. If you just want to participate in a voting, you don't need to create an account. Actually, you're not supposed to do so because you want to stay anonymous. Okay, well, I played around today. So you can create a new voting, let's say, should we leave the European Union? Okay, let's pick a start time, probably one that is before now, and okay. Then you can select whether you want to, which means of authentication you support. Handysignatur, Bürgerkarte is the one, is one option, and the other one is just SMS authentication. So you provide a phone number, you get an SMS, and the voting administrator has to check if the person who owns this phone number is somebody who is eligible to vote. But we're going to stick with the Bürgerkarte.
So is there no, is it only yes or no, or can you have different?
No, well, now I created the voting, and the voting you may add any number of questions. So, for example, I can add a question here.
Hard, soft.
Yeah, red. It's exit red. Which type of exit is best? Okay, and then you can pick either it's a decision question, which is yes, no, or hard Brexit, or soft Brexit. Then you can create multiple choice questions, where you can select any number of options, or you can pick an ordering question, where you can say that, I don't know, if you want to vote for the representatives for the next elections, then you can order the candidates in a specific order. But in this case, let's pick a decision question. Yeah. Okay, so we have a hard exit and a soft exit.
No exit.
No, that's not an option anymore. It's okay. And what you would usually do is you would send out this link to all people who might be eligible to vote. In this case, I won't send it.
Each link can be used only once?
No, the link is, so when you get the link, you need to do a registration procedure. That's what happens here.
But you said it's anonymous.
Yeah, it's anonymous. After the registration procedure, the voting administrator has to determine if you're eligible to vote or if you're not. That is not anonymous. So otherwise anyone could vote.
So
right?
He know I did vote, but he don't know what I did vote. Or did I apply
he know that you registered, but he doesn't know if you voted or if you didn't vote, unless everybody who registered cast their vote. Then the administrator knows that everybody cast their vote, but apart from that, he really shouldn't know anything. Okay, so now I'm doing my registration as a voter. Okay. Yep. Apparently that way.
Maybe not save the password.
The password is. Yeah. That doesn't really matter. Yeah, I got it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now the registration process is finished. there is only one. Yeah, it's back to basics with Apple. Okay. There is no right mouse button, is there?
Just if you use a mouse.
Okay. Okay. Now you can see that there is one open registration, and I can either say this person is eligible to vote or this person is not. In this case, I say yes there. And they should, after a few seconds, appear down here. So now this person is...
Did the person enter the name, or was the name...
no,
you got it from the Bürgerkarte?
Yeah, I got it from Bürgerkarte.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Now I should have received an email with my voting link. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's too long. Oh, right. I need to unlock this question.
Du hast erst Mai eingeben.
No. Thank you.
So you can.
Yeah, I tested it yesterday, and yesterday it was.
So you can use the time.
There's some things not really blockchain, like like edit stuff.
So could you still
Yeah.
edit the other question at this point?
At this point, I can't edit it anymore because now I have to. There was this button that said Freischalten or unlock, and at this point in time, when I click it, then everybody can cast their votes, and I can't edit it anymore.
But you can edit the time frame of it.
I can edit the time frame of it, yes.
If you want, I just created the election which is active. Should I send you the link?
No, it's changed the time.
Thank you. Okay. So now I can cast a vote, and I can say heart X. Nah, so let's make it soft. Okay. So what you see here is, although it's anonymous, I managed to implement it in a way that I can still see, if I provide my password, what I was voting for. So I can still see the voting result. And here I can see the administrator, this gets updated automatically, so the administrator sees that one vote was cast, and when the administrator says that everybody who was eligible to vote has voted, then he can close the voting, and then you see the results here. So you see that 100% of all voters were voting for soft exit. Yeah.
Do you make any technical steps so that as a user or as a voter, I can be sure that I'm anonymous and the admin cannot match the voting ID to my real name?
Yes, so there are two separate applications running on two separate servers. The one server knows about my voter ID and receives at my email address, so there is a match. And the other application knows about voter IDs, but knows nothing about the identity of the person behind that voter ID. If you analyzed log files, for example, then you could definitely find out who voted for what. But that's something that was out of scope for me.
Yeah, because that is confusing, I think, on the second page. When you talk about proof of identity,
Yeah.
and then in the fourth bullet point you talk about anonymous voting, right? So it's like, I mean, I understand,
Yeah.
but it's confusing if you tell the story in this way that you first you say, you have to, it's great because it's anonymous, right?
Yeah.
And later you say, yeah, but you have to give proof. Right?
Well, it's for me the concept behind it is more or less similar to Wahlkarten. With the Bürgerkarte, you also have to provide proof of identity. Then you get your Bürgerkarte, right?
Yes.
And then you cast the ballot, and it's an anonymous vote. And I more or less translated this process into software that is usually.
Well, with the Bürgerkarte, it's actually not, because still you can see you can read the name, right? Which is outside on the. I mean, if you
never.
Right?
Yeah, I never used one. I don't know.
There is your name, of course, because you send it back. You have to sign.
It's quite comparable because you put the anonymous envelope inside of the named envelope.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes. They don't put it together, the information, right?
Yeah.
The same is here, right?
Exactly. So you have to. That's what something where you have to trust me that I don't analyze log files or other. Or have to that I match the data from the one server to the data from the other server to find out who voted for what.
Personally, for me, I think it's an issue when we talk about mass adoption, for example.
Yeah.
Because if you're telling all these wonderful things you can do with your blockchain at the back end, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you can just fool me, right? You can just tell me all these wonderful words, right? And I just believe you, and in the back end there is nothing, right?
Yeah, that's.
Right.
Well, sorry.
No worries.
If you say the security is application to servers, but both servers are in control of you, that's absolutely not a blockchain, and also the decentralized element is not existing here. So we're not talking about the blockchain.
We're not talking about distributed ledger blockchain yet, so that's absolutely clear. Yeah.
But even if there would be one, how could I know? As a normal user, if I just want to vote, I don't know.
That's always a problem with
yes.
As a normal user, do you know about?
Because my mother, for example, I can tell her, hey, it's super safe, it's on the blockchain and everything, and she said, yeah, it's wonderful, but I don't believe you. Where's my proof, right? I cannot tell her, go there, check the address, check the hash, make the hash of the hash.
Yeah,
she can't.
But you can say it's mathematically secured, so that's. So you can prove that it's secure. Yeah? In this case, you cannot prove it because you cannot prove that he isn't comparing data from server 1 with server 2 and now he knows it. Or he cannot prove that someone is changing the date of the voting to manipulate the results.
Yeah. So we could, I could show you, for example, that when I get into the database and manipulate the vote, then I could show you that, you see here, I mean, it's very small, but this green sign, this green sign says that the integrity of the voting data was checked and that everything is okay.
But along that you're able to change the time frame is, so this is not secured in your block.
What I did now that I changed the time frame of the voting. No, that's not secured.
Exactly. Yeah. So and this alone gives a lot of ways to manipulate votes.
But
I just closed it one day earlier, and some people who would come voting late, no
you open again.
They can't vote anymore, right? Yeah, but they see that they cannot vote, so it's transparent to the user. But that was a requirement from my customers, from the organizations, that they want to be flexible when they open a question for voting and when they close it for voting, because often they have a short time frame where they want to allow voting, and then they want to be flexible with that. Yeah.
So who is using it? Since you're saying there's a customer, so what organization is using it?
Customers is potential customers, people I talked to, like the Green Party, or there was an organization in Vienna and several other parts of the Green. So, as you know, all these parties there are there's Bundesebene, so there's an Austrian Green Party, there's one in each Bundesland. There are dozens of them, and each of them has their own rules and so on. Yeah. Yeah, right. There was.
He will change the time. So you have a business model behind?
No, there is no business model. No.
You don't want to valorize this.
At the moment, no. So the business model maybe for in the long-term future would be to contact Aktiengesellschaften, so stock companies, because they also usually have a lot of people who are eligible to vote on some things, on decisions about how much, yeah, and maybe that's an option. But for now, I think I have to find customers who are using it, so that I can prove that it works. And yeah.
Is it open source in a way that I can run the complete service on my own server, or do I have to use your services? So.
This is running in Google's App Engine, and you have to use Google App Engine at the moment. But you can modify it in a way that it's not required to run in Google App Engine. I'm using it primarily for the database and for the user account settings. If you pull that apart, then you can run it on your machine as well. This part is implemented in C#.net using ASP.NET Core, and the other part, the other server handling the user-specific information that is written in Node.js.
Maybe mentioning if you do a project for NetID, it's a prerequisite to have open source.
Yeah, it's on GitHub. Yep.
Is it planned to have some sort of voting delegate system, like liquid democracy?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, if somebody approaches me and says, I want to use it, can you implement a delegation process? Then yes. There was one organization I talked before in Vienna who required this, but they said they wouldn't use it if I used Google's App Engine because they don't want their data on Google servers. So they're out of focus at the moment. But yes, that's should be doable. That's also an experience I made, that every organization has very specific types of how their voting processes are, with delegations, with different weights of votes, so that one person, I don't know, who is higher up in the hierarchy of the party maybe has 3 votes, and another one has 9 votes, and another one has 1 vote. And I did not, at the current point in time, I did not want to implement all of this because I wanted to make it simple. And maybe the organizations who have these complex voting schemes should adapt their voting schemes and have simpler voting schemes. But yeah, that's not my decision.
It's the Bürgerkarte is only in Austria, so
yes.
Outside of Austria you have similar options available, or?
Well, it depends.
The market would be very limited if you say it's only for Austria.
Yeah, at the moment it's only for Austria. I checked other countries, the Northern European countries, Scandinavian countries. Estonia is on the forefront of those countries. All of those have kind of similar systems. In Italy, I talked to a few people from Italy. They have no idea about anything like this going on in Italy. In Germany, it sounded like that there would be, for example, in Baden-Württemberg, they use it, but they don't use it in Bavaria or so. There seems to be no common European solution at the moment. But I heard that they're planning on an EID system that should be usable in all over Europe.
Okay. So you say basically Austria is really the first adopter in this area?
One of the first adopters.
So let's say Estonia is far ahead.
Yeah. But
Switzerland is not so bad either. They have a strategy.
Yeah.
Switzerland.
Did you want now driver license coupled with your Bürgerkarte in end of the year? So when police stop me, I don't have to show them my driver license. I can show the app. And
okay.
Here is my driver license. So yeah. I think Austria is not that far behind.
Yeah.
I'm not sure regarding this example, because as far as I know...
Just today I did hear a report about this in radio. And that was their project development time scope end of the year.
But if you would guess, how many people do you think have activated the Bürgerkarte actually, and how?
I know one.
100,000.
How many? 100,000?
I think
More.
my guess was 100,000.
I'd say more.
I think a million, close to a million.
That's
handy signature.
But
So if I'm talking about the
okay, you're talking about the
I'm
physical
talking
card.
about the physical cards.
Okay, I'm
There are
really
no
supporting
also
the card.
ones, but this was not usable.
Yeah.
You can forget it.
So
But handy signature
handy signature
And
is a
signature
million.
is a bit more than a million now, yeah. But I mean, it sounds like a lot, but still it's a minority, which was
But what
also...
you did is handy signature, right?
Yes, this is only handy signature. I don't support the physical card. That's also, the name Bürgerkarte is not very well chosen because everybody thinks of a physical card when it was, but now
because the e-card was basically you can upgrade your e-cards to be your Bürgerkarte, and everyone should have an e-card. So theoretically, each
nobody has a reader.
It's like I show you the e-Estonian cards, or the e-residency, that you see how they solved it.
So do you know? Sorry, do you know? Is it only for Austrian citizens, or can I, if I'm a German living in Austria, can I activate the Bürgerkarte?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
this is your special, and after all is somehow part of Austria. Usually it's for other countries also.
That's correct.
They do have such a system, but probably it's not very known.
Well, I have unfortunately my e-residency at home, so the reader what you get is a very small kind of USB kind of size kind of reader. You kind of twist it, so you have a kind of 90-degree twist, and then you can slide in the card. So it's really very, very small. It's not comparable to a kind of big, kind of bulky kind of reader. So you get it together with the card, and they just kind of made it a mandatory kind of thing everybody will get in Estonia with 14 years of age. When they are turning 14, they all get that card, they all get that reader, and most young people actually never go to a voting booth, and they just use their card with the reader. And you can do that. Oh, here it is. So somebody else has it. So that's the reader, actually. So it's really like this small, and you slide it open, and then you put in your card like this, basically like this. So that's going into your PC, and that's basically all.
And the software is inside, or you have to install something?
This is kind of key, like the. This is your ID card. If your computer is compromised, it might do something different what you choose on screen. Yeah, so it's not the most secure way of voting you can think of, because then you would have to have a reader with some keypad, and the Estonians, they just said, well, we are not going for the most expensive, most complicated version. We're going for something we can easily distribute among our people.
By the way, the current Brexit online petition, which is mentioned a lot, has zero protection. I tried today. Just an idea about the state of the
so
current online Brexit petition, which is mentioned a lot in media.
There is no protection. You know, they say 6 million underwrote the petition of no Brexit, and it's like an email address and.
And you need to know our postcode, valid postcode. It's doable.
So that's already enough.
Okay, so
that's hitting the media.
So let's make it 10 million till tomorrow, huh?
Yeah, I said they will probably become suspicious when it's above 65 million.
Yeah.
But isn't the European one already in place? Because at Finance Online you can choose between handy signature and European login, for example.
one kind of layer and log in different systems or different, I think it's called Stork or something.
Is this the EDAS?
Yeah,
Or is it
there's different systems.
No, it's
Bringing children, no?
I know that they're talking about EID, but you know, it's like nothing happens from yesterday till today in European Union levels. I wouldn't expect some unified identity system, by the way, and it's definitely a centralized kind of logic they're usually putting in.
But didn't the guy doing this Bürgerkarte thing show us something in that regard? There is something in the signature, there is something.
You mean Andreas?
Yeah.
Andreas, when he was talking about self-sovereign identity.
Yeah, he showed some.
I can't tell.
This European.
So how much do you pay for access to Bürgerkarte service? Is it free?
It's free. Yeah.
Whom do you need to talk to in order to get access? Because it's not really an open API, is it?
It is more or less an open API. So
can you access it without?
Yes, you don't need an API key or so. There is an API. If you want to use the API, you need an API key, and I think you have to pay for that. If you just want to implement the Handysignatur, that's.
Where did you find the documentation for that? Because I looked this up 2 years or so ago. I wanted to do some proof of concept, which.
It's ARTIS.
Yeah.
And they have, I think it's called ARTIS Labs, where you can find sample code. So what you do is, I think I can't open this again. Yeah.
They got never attacked.
Yeah.
When they make it free accessible.
So the point, if I remember right, when we were looking at the proof of concept was what Didi was making at that time, he called it unendliche Wahl. It was at the time when we were voting for president, and we had to repeat the vote several times. And so he made a proof of concept where you could vote for either one of the two candidates, and it was resetting every 24 hours. And we were thinking about kind of putting it in a way to make it really legit with a Bürgerkarte or Handysignature kind of system. But then we were talking to ARTIS, and ARTIS wants to sell you their API access. And we did not get any information how you would get that for free.
Okay.
So we thought there is just a way for any kind of access to that kind of service.
Yeah.
Maybe if we ask them, the backdoor is closed fast, so...
So we asked you how we can use it, it's probably better.
Yeah. I just wanted to show you, I now changed the question from which type of exit is best to worst, and now I see a red exclamation mark here. Maybe this could be a bit more more obvious, but now it says the integrity check for the voting results has failed.
So you're checking the hash of the question? Or?
Yes, exactly. And if you want to use Handysignatur, you include this page as an iframe into your page. And when opening this iframe, you have to pass it along which data should be signed and where the signed data should be sent to. So you have to provide a URL where the signed data is sent to. It has to be HTTPS, and it has to be one of a list of supported certificates. And then all you do is include this as an iframe.
What do you mean with list of supported certificates?
So they will send you the signed data.
Yeah.
And for example, I first evaluated Amazon's cloud thing, EC2, and they did not accept Amazon's HTTPS root certificate. They accepted Google's certificate, but not Amazon's certificate. I don't know. They have a list of trusted certificates, and you have to provide.
So this is actually the weak point, right? Here, when it comes to accessibility. These ARTIS guys.
Yeah. but
because without them, I cannot participate in your polls, right? Or in my polls.
The whole signature thing is rely on that.
Well, it's a centralized system, so basically.
And I'm happy I have it though. So.
Well, you need it for a couple of services.
You can. I also support that you can provide a proof of identity using your mobile phone, which is weaker. Yeah, so that you prove that a phone number is yours, and then the voting administrator has to check. Okay, person A has proven that mobile phone number X is their mobile phone number, and then they can unlock you for the voting.
Is that a free service as well?
No, that's not free. That's about. It's more expensive than I thought. I think I pay 8 or 9 cents per SMS.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Any more questions?
I still have like one question about the anonymity. Like, how does it work? Like, there's like this server that checks the identity and then returns some like
magic
unique ID for the user.
Yeah.
Or?
Well, the process, if you want to Google it, it's called RSA blinding. What you do is you, as a voter, you generate a random number and you blind it using a cryptographic method. Then together with the proof of identity, you send it to the server, to the voting site. The voting site then checks if the proof of identity is valid, and it will sign your blinded random number. You get the blinded and signed random number. You can then unblind it, so it's a cryptographic function that you can both use on your random number and also on the blinded and signed number to unblind it. Then you have the signed original number. When voting, you just provide this signed number, which proves that somebody signed your data. And
compromise those servers that have all the data what is stored.
Yes, that's, I think, I wouldn't know any way how to prevent that.
Yeah,
other than using.
You could use real blockchain technology and this problem should be solved.
How
No, you cannot avoid the oracle. Yeah? So this e-trust signing this oracle is always existing.
You know, the link between the real identity and the voting token is still the same problem.
That's the point where you have to trust me that I'm not trying to find out whose voter identity belongs to which real identity. But that I would have to jump through a lot of hoops to find that out.
So it's easy to trust somebody once you know them, but as long as you don't know them.
Yeah. That's right.
So, but you told that the votes are stored on such a small private blockchain, and the initial, the first block is the question.
Mm-hmm.
And can I have a copy of those blocks, or? Not
yet, but that's on the. I don't know how to switch between applications here, but that's on my to-do list.
So
yes, really. Command tab.
Okay. Yeah.
Command tab.
So when you
open access to the voting result data, that's something that would get me closer to benefiting from the blockchain technology, because then that's what I meant. I think I would need to provide a desktop application where you can just fetch the data and check if they're consistent and if the integrity is given. Yeah.
What I like is that your blockchain is only moving if there is security. Yeah? This is a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, if you can add this decentral parts to it, it could become some real blockchain.
Yeah.
And maybe make some kind of heartbeat, like once a day block is generated or something like this. But don't. There's like so many Ethereum clone coins or something like this that will be for all 15 seconds a block. and on a whole day there's only one transaction happening, yeah? For what all the blocks are created, yeah? So this is an innovative way to say the block is only created if there's a transaction waiting to be included in a block.
I think Daniel had another question.
Regarding the identity blinding, have you stumbled over bingo voting?
No.
I don't really understand it so that I could explain it, but as far as I understand it, it tries to solve this problem.
Okay.
By providing the voter blinded token for each choice they make.
Yeah.
And then they have the ability to somehow sign only this one token that they want to provide, and somehow it mixes everything up so that you cannot trace back who has voted for what.
Okay.
Maybe you read, maybe you at the point where you understand it.
Bingo, like the old people's game.
It's called bingo voting. It's an algorithm on how to implement such kind of voting. The Wikipedia article is quite comprehensive.
Okay. Thank you.
And another question, the database you described, in my opinion, is a clone of Git. Because Git exactly works that way. You have an initial commit, and every commit changes the head hash. And if you change any byte within the chain, everything changes the head hash.
Yeah.
So maybe you could just use Git for your backend database, and then it's quite easy to provide context.
Isn't Git actually using Merkle trees for the branch?
I don't think they use Merkle trees, but the chain in itself is linked with hashes, and each vote could be one commit.
Okay. Yeah.
Then you don't need to implement any client for it. You can just push it to GitHub and everyone can see it. And if you write JSON data, for example, it's also quite readable.
It is JSON data, so that's should be doable. Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Should I continue? Okay. Good. Projects. As I mentioned, we took part at the hackathon from Infineon Monday, Tuesday. So specifically, Jakub was part of our team, Thomas, Peter and Didi, and Dario put everything into a kind of video frame. We did actually two projects. One project was called Kabut Kamusi. I think to you, Jakub, we explained what it means, right? So, if you don't pay, you can't listen to music. For everybody from Austria, I think it's clear. And the second one was called Guardian Angel. It was a kind of recovery, social recovery scheme using those Infineon cards. So that you basically have a couple of cards which can exchange the key which is accessing funds in a smart contract. But that was presented as a kind of it could be done in that way, and this one consumed most of the work which was done during the hackathon. And to give you a little kind of background, I show you the presentation first, and then we go to the demo and discussing the demo, how it's working. So, back in 2017, yes, autumn 17, I think, we had a project which was called Play for Privacy. And Play for Privacy was using the facade of the Kunsthaus to play Go on it. And we had a web application where you could set your stones in Go, and you saw where the others set their stones in Go, and then the ones which got the most kind of set stones, this one was chosen by the algorithm that it will be kind of fixed, and that was then it switched over to the next team, and the other team was doing just the same, and then it was running for I think 20 minutes, and then a new game started.
And for every stone you set, you got 1 play token. So at the end, after 1 month of that project from the Kunsthaus, 1 million of play tokens were distributed to the participants during that time period, and it was always played in the dark to have the nice impression of the facade, and it was played for 3 hours every day for about 1 month. And to give you a feeling, if you have not been part, I included the video from that time, so shrink it down to just 30 seconds, so you see a couple of images how it looked on the facade. Oh, it's even with music. So we had this way of setting the stones. Here you see the kind of play field on the facade. So here they are. So just to give you a kind of feeling what it looked like at that time. Yeah, there was some donation part, there was some play part, but as I said, there was 1 million play token generated during that time frame. And when we were discussing the possible kind of contribution for the hackathon, Didi came up with this idea that we could use those play tokens to use them to play a record player and to kind of use them in that setting. So we are not kind of artificially generating new tokens, but we're taking the ones which are already on the Ethereum blockchain. And yeah, which were generated during that kind of project period, and use them for that particular use case. But of course, we wanted to do it on ARTIS and not on Ethereum, so we had to come up with an idea how we can use those play tokens on ARTIS. And the idea was to move those play tokens via a bridge to ARTIS. So the next thing in the project was to build up a bridge between Ethereum and the ARTIS main chain. And then sufficient play tokens were moved over to ARTIS, and they were made streamable. So they got this kind of additional kind of feature that they are not just transferable between participants, but they are transferable in a continuous fashion on the ARTIS blockchain. So when you move them over now via that particular bridge, they change from PLI, from play to S-play, to streamable play tokens. So everything what was moved over to ARTIS was now streamable. And so we had those tokens over there. Then we were using that particular card, which is provided by Infineon, which is a secure element containing, or small microchip containing a card, where you're able to generate addresses up to or private public key pairs which fit a specific curve, which is good for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, and a lot of other kind of blockchain systems, and where you can generate up to 256 private public key pairs, and you cannot access the private key. You can import a seed phrase on the first index, but all the others, they are generated on the card, and you never can access the private key on it. So the important part was to get streamable play tokens onto that card, which are then used to operate the record player. So the thing is that, and this is again a video which shows you what we are going to demonstrate here, but first you have to select your music. Here you can see basically the things what we will show here live as well.
So on that screen you see a kind of visualization of the streaming money, so the streaming flow of tokens from one account to the other. On that one you see the blockchain transaction, when you see on BlockScout, on the Blockchain Explorer, when it's kind of processed. And the record player, which was purchased last Sunday, was a kind of has a nice feature, because basically it doesn't have a standby button, it doesn't even have an on switch button. When you plug it in, it has power, and when you turn off the power, it stops playing. And so the whole setup is in a way that we have here a plug where you can switch on and off via USB the plugs. So one of the Raspberry Pis is controlling that power switch, or switching power on and off. And the other Raspberry is looking at the blockchain itself, or the one is looking at the blockchain if it's paid and switched on and off, and the other one is controlling basically, is the card on the reader or is it off the reader? So you can imagine that when you take away the card, that's a problem, because you would need to sign a transaction to stop the stream, to stop the playing. So we have to do the signed transaction already in the very beginning, that when you take away the card, it stops playing as well. So showing you the video, and what you see here, the card is put onto the reader. So the record player is starting playing. Now you see here the transaction coming in. And this takes a little longer, it's a time delay that you see the stream flowing. Just a second. You can choose a different music if you like. So here's the screen. Well, we don't have a big selection. So card is taken away. You see the music stopped, you see the transaction, and you see also the update that the stream stopped kind of flowing. So, and now the big question is, oh, here we see a little bit close up. So basically, card is put on. So obviously, power is switched on because money is flowing. That's just a repetition of basically how it works. So if you're wondering because of the music, so this is Peter Alexander, a very famous Austrian singer, and I should stop basically right now because otherwise we're getting problems with rights. Yeah, we demoed streaming money applications for parking back in April 18. So basically you could leave your car and the stream starts flowing, and you come back and it stops flowing as a kind of understandable way that you don't have to worry that your park ticket is kind of ending or something like that. But of course you could think of other things as well. Subscriptions is a quite logical example. What I like to explain is in energy, for example, if you're reading your meter all the time, so like, I don't know, every day or every week, you could just adjust the payment flow based on your consumption, and you don't have to pay again something or get something back at the end of the year. So it's always adjusted in smaller increments, which kind of doesn't kind of surprise you at the very end when you have the meter readings. That would be a nice application. So yeah, well that's the kind of presentation demo. So now let's try to find out if it's still working. First, we do music selection, so we could again, of course, play Peter Alexander.
Yes, of course.
And well, we have other things there as well. So we have something which was obviously chosen because of the cover. It's called Raga Raga. It's some, what is it?
Well, it's Raga.
It's Raga. It's Raga, and then we have Beethoven and something else. I don't know. So, what do you want to hear?
We vote for it, huh?
Yeah, let's do a voting. Let's make a quick vote. Please raise your hand. Who wants to hear Raga Raga? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And who wants to hear Peter Alexander? 1, 2, 3. Okay, Raga Raga it is. So let's change it. You know, it reminds me back to my old days when I was still a disc jockey. What?
What happened to Beethoven?
Beethoven? I don't know. It's somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Beethoven is somewhere over there, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
So my disc jockey times are long over.
And somewhere else would be für Geistervertreibungen fehlt die gesetzliche Grundlage. Coming from Kärnten.
So I think we take Beethoven, right? That's music, not talent.
Yeah. And we never check.
We won't get any problems from the licensing.
Yeah, well, you think so? There is probably some records, kind of whatever.
Beethoven?
No.
Yeah, not Beethoven himself, but somebody who made the prints.
I don't think you can license the music that is.
Of course you can. It's about
Yes.
the recording.
It's a recording.
Okay, we don't show the cover.
Well, I just don't tell who it is, but they might see the label. So, yeah, let's take first slide. So. Good. Everything should work, right? So let's see.
Display something.
Display.
Oh no. Blockchain's down.
So. Display.
So now you make one section?
Basically two. So only broadcasted one. So to get it started.
Where's the second one?
The second one is waiting for removing the card.
So it's in the device. Okay.
It's on the Raspberry.
So if I unlock it, then it will play indefinitely.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
We already had this problem.
The weakness is found in 5 seconds.
Well, transaction sent, power switched off. So let's see if the second one works too.
One out of two is enough.
Maybe it's already played empty.
A quick balance check. Computer says no.
Do you see anything on your? Oh. Okay, you're back. So you should see the transaction over there. And the stream is again not visualized. Didi, you need to unlock your screen, right? So any questions while we listen to this timeless piece of music?
Yes, for me, because it's the first time I learned about streaming transactions, so maybe can you just give me the fundamentals in a few sentences?
Basically, what you're doing is you have a smart contract which defines. Let's go a little less loud. So basically, you're creating a transaction which defines a flow rate of a token from one account to the other.
Like play tokens per second, or
right?
That's my fee.
Well, that's basically your payment.
Yeah. So I mean the fee to play the music.
Oh yeah, in our case, of course.
That's written here, so it's one play token a day in this case.
So you define that in the smart contract.
Yeah.
And then when you put your private key with the card, right? So you sign the transaction with the
signing
card,
the transaction with the private key on the card. Yes.
Yes. Then it gets.
Then it gets transmitted to the blockchain system.
Yes.
And kind of processed by the ARTIS blockchain system.
Yes.
And the other Raspberry is kind of watching the blockchain.
Yes.
And when he sees there is somebody playing for music,
yes,
then it switches on the plug.
Okay.
And then the record player starts playing.
Okay. So, but the time when I can switch on or off, it's still the block time, right? Like in between, I cannot stop. Okay.
Well, basically,
this minimum, right?
The calculation is more precise, but you will not see it.
Okay.
So you could trust unconfirmed transaction will start the recording, I guess.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah. So I guess you do.
I don't know. Do we trust unconfirmed transaction, or do we wait until it's in the block?
You wait for a block, but you could look in the mempool and just say, okay, someone wants to, and then you could start playing music.
But you have 5 seconds block time, so that's not such a
It's a theoretical question. You could
Yeah, you could make it.
Related to streams.
Yeah, you could make it. You could make it.
You could make it instant.
You could make it instant playing while it's not in the block, but in here it's within the 5 seconds.
You could fake 4 seconds or something like this.
Correct.
And so risk versus reward. You say the risk is getting 4 seconds unpaid towards the reward that it starts instant. Maybe it pays off.
Mm-hmm.
You trust us.
You have 4 seconds every 5 seconds.
So, I think you had a question.
No, sorry. I have something like this seen in a YouTube video of a candy machine. It's kind of the same thing.
Well, it's really hard to tell the difference how things behave, because basically you could do just the same with a completely kind of setup in the backgrounds and make that an identity card and just check if somebody owns the card, and then saying, okay, well that address lies on the reader, and then I switch on the player. You would not see that money is flowing, but of course here we did this kind of whole kind of thing. So it's you're really paying in the moment when the music plays, and you stop paying when it stops.
Stream is the difference, because in the candy machine you pay one payment and then you get one candy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here it keeps continue playing, and you don't send transactions over and over and over and over again. This is the big difference. So you start it, and it will start playing until you stop it.
Yeah.
Without additional transactions. And this is in this way not done by anyone before.
So you have just one transaction?
Well, one for start and one to end.
Okay, and the amount of blocks which are created are calculated, so the time is calculated and the amount of tokens you have to pay them.
It's flowing with the flow rate. As it said, it's one play token per day.
Okay.
So if you leave it playing for 1 day, you will have transferred 1 play token over that time frame.
Or if it's just a few minutes, then it's a fraction
it's the fraction of that.
But it's not that the 1 token is transferred after the day, it's basically...
It's instant, I mean like...
Granularity is block time.
Sorry?
It's block time granularity.
It's in the
because
block.
you cannot do a close transaction between blocks.
Okay.
That's the maximum
So
granularity.
basically what you mean streamable is, I mean you make it smaller and smaller, right? And then you call it streamable, but it's still an amount of tokens per time.
It's not multiple transactions.
Yeah.
It's just one to start and one to stop. Even if it's 1 million blocks.
Yes. Yeah, but you always have a limit per time. Even if you're talking about a gas stream, you will talk about volume per second.
Yes.
So that's like you always have.
It's like a flow of water. So basically, the more you send per time, the more will be received.
For this purpose, why have you chosen the ARTIS blockchain and not the Ethereum or?
because it's ours.
Because it's a lot easier.
Why?
For us, because we have direct access to ARTIS. For Ethereum, it becomes really costly if you're doing that. So I think you discovered that during the hype. So here, of course, the transaction fees are a lot lower. We have started the ARTIS blockchain here, so it's a lot easier for us as well.
For microtransactions, it is easier.
But that's not a microtransaction. What you're seeing here.
Okay.
Microtransaction would be you have a lot of transactions with very low value. This is you have one transaction to get it started and one to get it stopped. It's a calculated amount of money over time. It's a different technical approach from that perspective. It's for the way how we use it, it makes a lot of sense if you're saying I want to reduce the load on the blockchain. If you have long time payments, I mean, kind of switching on a record player every couple of seconds is maybe not the most obvious use case. It's more the long-term payment kind of stuff, like subscriptions, like energy, like those kind of things, which don't change so much. So there it's like, okay, you're moving money really immediately. It's not like a payment schedule. It's not like once per month, once per week. It's continuous over the whole time. So you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask if you ever considered using a hybrid approach between streaming and microtransaction. For example, if you define keep a lifetime, that you have to have a transaction every hour in order to avoid draining your. Because, well, in this case, maybe I want to listen to one song and then I'll leave my card here, I forget it, like turn on the volume and it keeps streaming. And I don't know, somehow the transaction is lost. But if you, I mean, yeah. I think
the security measure you mean for the user?
Yeah.
But the Raspberry is crashing and never sends the stuff.
Well, usually you can stop the stream from both sides.
Okay.
So even the recipient can stop the stream, but the sender can stop the stream. So you can put in several security measures that kind of thing is not happening, that you're kind of, oh my goodness, I have to kind of drain all the funds away from that account and then I'm not paying anymore, and I sent him a letter or an email that I'm not going to pay anymore. So you have security measures in place, and you can also, this is one way of programming it. So you could, of course, program it that you say, I pay up to this amount or something like that. So it's not like this is whatever you want to do into smart contracts. You can program it the way you want it to be.
But this is not a smart contract.
This is a smart contract.
It is a smart contract. Okay, so it's not built into the ARTIS blockchain, the streams.
Well, it is a smart contract on the ARTIS blockchain.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know what you mean, because basically a token is a smart contract on the ARTIS blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain.
Okay, but okay.
So
every transaction is a smart contract on Ethereum, or is it?
Every token is basically handled via smart contracts on Ethereum.
Yeah.
So everything you know there is only one native coin which is not a smart contract.
Yeah.
So it's ETH, and in ARTIS it's ATS, and
And everything else, basically what you know from the tokens, they're smart contracts. They're an integer in a smart contract.
Okay. But this auto stop you were thinking about, it's more like on the provider side.
Yeah.
For example, I see it on Netflix a lot. If my kids are watching some kind of Netflix, yeah, and there's a series, 1, 2, 5, 3, 4, 5, and then when you see the 5th episode, then he's asking you really watching, and so you have to do something to keep watching, yeah? And so I think it's on the provider side, because they want to save bandwidth, feeding TVs, no one is really watching, yeah? And I think it's here also, or if you make a phone call, I think after some time the call is also closing. You cannot have the call open forever. Yeah? So there are some protection features, but it is on provider side.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you cannot. It's very depending on the use case, basically, and maybe also regulatory issues to make sure that you can fulfill that nobody's ripped off. And if people are ripped off, they have the regular legal system to say, hey, I was ripped off. Maybe in crypto it's not working yet that good, but I'm pretty sure that in the future it is going in a similar direction. So, for example, we are using Stream for an upcoming demonstration for energy payment, where we use a similar kind of feature. So basically, being sure that you pay what you get. So also a time-based payment, as long as you are as you're charging a car, as long you basically pay for that charging.
But it's always a fixed amount. So, for example, with energy by nature, the price of energy is not fixed.
No, it would be a kind of defined rate of payment, depending on the service provider. So the service provider would say, I want to have, let's say, 50 cents per kilowatt hour or per time. Today they are very much frequently charging per time. So because you are blocking a place which is valuable, they say, well, you're paying that much amount per time. And the longer you stay there, the longer you have to pay. And the service provider will, of course, kind of ask you to pay as long as you stand there, and in our case we can implement it in a way that the money is flowing as long as you're there. And that would be a possible use case for that kind of payment. And it's like, it depends very much on the use case, what you're building into. So it might be a streaming kind of implementation like this one. It might be an escrow implementation where you move some amount of money into a smart contract and pay something to the service provider and get something back, what is not consumed. And then you have another one where you say you have these micropayments where you're going maybe in a second layer payment system where you have state channels where you are kind of sending messages in very short time periods, and you're sending a lot of messages to the recipient or to the service provider. And I think it will very much depend on the use case, how you have to implement it, what kind of option you're using on the blockchain system itself. Available are all of them, and that makes it kind of, you can use the things what you need for the particular kind of option what you're facing. So now I need to save some money.
We already spent 1 play cent.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Now you know how much music you can listen to when you're
Yeah, I think I could for ages.
Yeah, you could play quite a long time, right? So if you want to make them streamable on ARTIS, you have to move them over the bridge.
Yeah.
So from Ethereum. So any more questions? No? Let's drink a couple of beers.